Let's try now.
Okay, can you hear me?
No.
No?
No.
What about now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Are you the chair or are you the moderator? Okay. Do you want to start or I can start?
Yes. Well, I'll start by just introducing myself. I'm Mike Strode of Kola Collaborative. I will be moderating this panel where we're supposed to have Clark, connected neighborhoods and connect Woodlawn a bit, and so we're going to be talking about utility co-ops. And because I am a IT consultant and I do not work in a public utility, I will be learning along with all of you, and I look forward to that. So I will offer the panelist that is here an opportunity to introduce themselves.
So, my name is Christina Uzzo. I'm the Environmental Outreach Coordinator at the Citizens Utility Board. We're a utility watchdog organization, so we make sure that the large utilities aren't overcharging people or disconnecting service into public housing or things like that. We've been around since the 80s, so we've been around for a long time. We have a big space within the Illinois energy community, just making sure that affordability is being taken into account whenever we're making new energy policy. And then I'm also here representing Solar in the Community, which is a project of the Citizens Utility Board, of Elevate Energy, and of the Environmental Defense Fund. And it's a project to create a web platform where communities that are interested in community solar projects can post that they have a group of people that are interested and that they possibly have a site, and then this website can connect them with developers who are interested in going in and actually building that project, because if we don't have a platform like that, it's going to be left up to developers to recruit their own subscribers to these projects. And we believe that there's already a lot of interest in community solar. There's a lot of people that can't have rooftop solar for a number of reasons and want to have community solar projects. So we believe that if we can kind of harness that organic interest in community solar projects, it can just be more efficient than just relying on developers to go door to door and try to get people. And maybe they would only go to richer communities and do that. So I am also representing Solar in the Community, which is a website that will launch in September.
Excellent. So talk about maybe a bit about the Citizens Utility Board's advocacy work. If there's any relationship with sort of utility cooperatives, or what that relationship looks like.
Yeah, so we represent the consumers and make sure that, like I said, make sure that people aren't getting overcharged. We file complaints if people feel that anything unjust has happened with their utility, if they've been disconnected or anything like that. And we work to make sure that the larger energy companies like ComEd and Ameren aren't raising people's rates unnecessarily. There are a handful of utility co-ops downstate, and we also do work trying to make sure that they aren't overcharging people as well. But we don't directly have a relationship with those co-ops. We don't have a relationship with any of the energy companies because we're a third party. We were passed into law by the Illinois legislature to be a third party group that can advocate for consumers, to make sure that their voice is also being represented by lawyers at these decisions.
And in terms of the Solar and Community site that's been developed, how did that sort of process come to be incubated? What was the process of getting the partners together to build out that platform?
The Environmental Defense Fund played a big role in spearheading the development of the Solar in the Community website, and they also had a web developer develop it. It's a great website, and it came from, like I said, the knowledge that there is natural interest in these projects, and just wanting to make it so that there's a platform that people can go to learn more about them and put their project ideas out there without having to necessarily only go through developers, which leaves a lot of the burden up to people to do a lot of research and try to find the best developer. And these are developers that are trying to make money off of these projects. So trying to create a platform where instead the developers are reaching out to the communities that are already organized and interested in community solar, so that it can just maybe happen a little bit quicker. So I guess I should back up and explain a little bit what community solar is. Community solar was made possible by the Future Energy Jobs Act, which was passed in December of 2016. And it's basically kind of like a solar farm, but smaller. It has to be less than 2 megawatts of production. And it's subscribed, there's like all these people that live in the community that can subscribe into it. And so it's ideal for people that can't have solar on their own rooftops, either because like there's too many trees, or because they live in an apartment building, or because they're renters, or if their roof is not in good condition, it would just be like too cost prohibitive to install rooftop solar. Community solar is ideal for people like that, which is the majority of people in Cook County and in Chicago, don't necessarily have the ability to install their own rooftop solar. And so the Future Energy Jobs Act created like a financing system where the state will pay for the solar energy generation and then they'll pay you to generate solar either on your rooftop or in these community solar projects, and then count that generation towards their overall goal of reaching 25% renewable energy by 2025. So they do that through SRECs, which are solar renewable energy credits, and there's like tiered levels of SRECs. So if you're like a large developer and you build like a huge utility scale solar farm like out in the middle of nowhere, that you get SRECs for that, but those are the lowest value SRECs. And then if you're going in and you're building a community solar project that people can actually see and like subscribe to and like have ownership of in their community, then the SREC value is higher, because those projects also take more money to put in because they're like in urban areas. And then there's an even higher level of SREC for solar for all projects, which is basically a community solar project that meets certain requirements in terms of who it's serving. So it has to serve like a certain percentage of low-income people, and it has to save those people at least 50% on their energy bills every month. So it's a really good system that takes a lot of different things into account, and it takes into account that like some communities wouldn't have as good of access to solar if we didn't like put incentives in place, and if we just left it up to developers, like they would just do it in the quickest, easiest way for them. So we're actually really happy with this legislation that was passed in Illinois. So that's what created community solar right now, and there's a bunch of projects being worked on, but none of them have been built yet. So it's a really exciting time to see how these projects develop.
Okay. And so when I have researched the sort of history of the utility cooperatives that exist in rural areas, it's kind of a history of just effectively divestment from those areas, and then the community just recognizing that, okay, well, we're not going to be served by these entrenched interests. We have to kind of build our own. How are these sort of entrenched utility interests in sort of these urban areas in Chicago, kind of taking to this idea of building out these community solar farms?
Yeah, so the Future Energy Jobs Act requires that ComEd and Ameren connect to community solar projects. So even if they don't necessarily, maybe some of them don't like it, but they have to do it, so that's good. And so they, they're like in support of it. It's a lot, since none of the projects have been built yet, and it's like kind of, we're still seeing how it's going to shake down. There's like still a lot of questions up in the air. The Illinois Power Agency just hired the program administrator for community solar like a month ago. Like it's all like very new. But the utilities are by law supposed to work with community solar projects and can get them connected to the grid. And so there's ways, they're going to like prioritize ones that are easiest to connect. So you should be like strategic in site selection to try to make it as easy to connect to the grid as possible, so that it can like your project will be higher up in the queue, because they're going to try to do the ones that are quickest to do first. But so far they are being cooperative.
Okay. And so the site launches in September?
Yes.
Okay. And so in terms of talked about, I'm assuming that that there are already sort of developers in the system, and they're sort of, I know I went to the site, and just kind of dropped my information in just to see for the launch. But what does project dispersal look like? Dispersed throughout sort of the 77 communities in Chicago. There's certainly communities that are less invested in than others. Is project dispersal looking like it's being equitably moved about?
Well, right now, there's a lot of people that have expressed interest in community solar, but in terms of actually on the site hasn't launched yet. There's only about there's only like 10 projects or so on the site right now, and a lot of them aren't in Chicago because it's a statewide site for anyone in Illinois to use. So it's kind of like the sample size right now is too small to like say if it's equitably distributed throughout Chicago, but that's why we're like trying to get the word out, because it can be a way to get solar in your community within like a year or two of like starting to organize right now. Like, so it can be something that can happen really quickly and be a really good like tangible change. So that's why we're trying to get the word out about it.
Okay. And, I'm no mathematician, so I would, forgive if this is like, too in-depth a question. But I do have a friend who has a largely off-grid house, or a largely powered sort of by solar and water and just various elements, that kind of spoke to me about the mathematics of having solar on the grid and what it looks like to kind of, for elements of the grid to turn down and then solar to turn up. Are those things that are, that the Citizens Utility Board has talked about with, the existing utility entities, or is that conversation that's happening around this at all?
So like how would community solar affect the grid at large?
Yes.
And yeah, so community solar is actually really good for the grid because it's dispersed, and when you have like large generation that's happening like far outside of an urban area or far outside of where it's being used, like a coal plant or a nuclear plant or even like a really large solar farm, you get a lot of line loss over the transmission lines. So there's just like a certain amount of energy that's just electricity is just lost to heat while it's being transferred. So it's more efficient when you can have distributed generation, because if you have a community solar project on top of a parking lot in a school, and then like the school's using 40% of that energy, and then other houses around are subscribing to the rest of it, you're not going to have that same amount of line loss. So that helps with the grid. And then solar is also good for the grid because it roughly lines up with like our peak usage of energy during the day. It's not an exact match, but it's pretty close because we use more energy during the day while we're awake for obvious reasons. And it can, especially during the summer, it can help reduce the likelihood that utility companies will have to turn on peaker plants. And peaker plants are natural gas turbines that are not turned on for like 99.5% of the year. They're just sitting there until like the couple hottest days of summer, and then they have to get turned on. They can turn on really quickly and meet like spikes in demand that happen from like everyone turning on their air conditioning at once. And so if we can have more like distributed solar generation, it reduces the likelihood that peaker plants would have to be turned on, and in the long run that'll reduce energy costs, because ComEd has to pay for those peaker plants to exist. Like, they're just paying for them to exist even when we're not using them. And that increase in those costs is what's largely responsible for ComEd's rates going up this year. And so if we can, over the next couple of years get a lot of, over the next 5 to 10 years, get a lot of community solar projects built and a lot of other renewable projects built, it can help bring some of those costs of having those peaker plants exist down. And then that should shake down into like lower rates as well. So it's good for the grid, which is part of the reason that the utilities are not like actively against it. And it's good for everyone. Like, even if you yourself aren't subscribed to a community solar project, it reduces the likelihood that like everyone else will also have to keep paying increased rates. So it's good for everyone involved.
Okay. And because we are here at a Cooperative Economy Summit, we've kind of talked about there being these solar developers, in the room. Is it possible that, the Citizens Utility Board is looking at, kind of thinking through how worker-owned solar development, entities could be in sort of the conversation at this time?
That's not something we're working on. I mean, it's something I would personally be really interested in, because solar is such a growing field and there's a lot of opportunity for new companies to come in. The Future Energy Jobs Act does have job training components that require that solar developers like train people of color and low-income people and to fill some of those openings, but that's still not a worker-owned co-op. But there is some effort to make sure that like these jobs are reaching people who would really benefit from them, but we're not working specifically on any like worker-owned Yeah, we don't work directly with developers, so.
Does anyone here represent a solar developer, potential worker-owned cooperative? They're not in the middle? Citizen? Anyone? Okay. Yep, I saw a hand go up back there. So perhaps, that there's a conversation to have in figuring out how to make sure that you're represented in the solar in your community site. And because I don't want to, pummel our panelists with, my own flurry of questions, I want to open up the floor for questions that you all might have about solar in your community, Citizens Utility Board, and their relationship to this utility co-op space.
Hi, my name's Ellie. I use she, her pronouns. I was wondering if you have any advice or suggestions or ideas for people who are not at the organized stage of being willing to submit a community solar project for developer consideration. It's something that I've been interested in the past, but I've had a hard time finding resources about how I would even go about organizing this with people, especially as relates to land and space for installation in an urban area and how we would pool capital and things like that. So I'm curious if you have any insights into like what the earlier stages of that process might look like for someone, especially in Chicago.
Yeah, I think probably part of the reason that you've had trouble finding resources is just because it is such a new program and where there aren't any. There's been theoretical case studies done by the county looking at kind of feasibility, and those case studies can be helpful to kind of get an idea, but they're
And I think that's part of it is I moved from Seattle, where they're kind of further along in this, and then I came here. And,
right.
Yeah.
But we, the application or the form you have to fill out on the Solar in the Community website is super simple. It's your name and then some check boxes and what community you live in. And so it asks have you secured a site yet? And you can click no, and it caters to people at all stages of organizing. And then you're also welcome to reach out to us. We have a large outreach component of our organization that can come do presentations. We have guides that can help you through the beginning stages of talking to developers. So basically you need a 40% anchor subscriber. So normally a store or a school or a business or a church or something like that can commit to using 40% of the energy generated by the solar project. And then after that, the rest can get subscribed out, and you don't need to necessarily find all of those subscribers. The developer can help you with that. So
sure.
I think maybe trying to start finding if you can find an anchor subscriber who's something that uses a fair amount of energy in the area.
Have you heard of a condo HOA serving as that anchor subscriber? Or?
I think that would probably work really well. Yeah, to have a condo HOA. Yeah, as long as there's enough units to use up 40% of the energy, or you could concentrate that. Yeah, as long as you had enough units.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Additional questions throughout the room?
I've often pondered about why we don't just utilize the existing EV roofs that's available in these urban environments. Are there any strategic barriers that prevents investing in solar panels and interlinking homes versus finding a big lot to build a solar farm?
So you mean rooftop solar on homes or on larger buildings?
Yes, but just interlinked into a grid. Where say a block or a few blocks all have solar panels and just run to the grid. Because it can avoid the storage problem, which battery cost is extremely expensive. It's one of the barriers. In the current existing community solar project, is that a viable option? Or is it only find a lot, build solar panels, find subscribers?
Right, there's a lot of opportunity for community solar projects to be built on top of roofs, but it'd have to be a larger roof. It wouldn't be built on 60 people's houses spread out, but you could build it on top of a school or on top of a larger building that would be willing to use their site for that.
Right. So what's the strategic barriers that prevents these homes from being connected to one grid? And
I'm not an expert on like connecting, like how solar panels get connected to the grid. I mean, each household would have to make the decision to install rooftop solar and like go through that process by themselves, which is getting a lot easier within Illinois and a lot more cost effective. And we have resources on our website about how to go through the rooftop solar process. And you could I guess you could talk to your neighbors and do that, but I don't know how it would work to I don't know how it would be different if everyone on a street came together to get them, or if just everyone independently decided to get them. I think it would look the same in terms of from the developer's side.
okay.
Yeah, sorry that I don't have a better
No, that's
answer.
Additional questions from the floor?
I have a question. I'm sorry I came in late. I know a woman who lives in Maryland, and they have, I don't know if this was asked before, they have solar panels which they've placed in landfill areas. Because that way, somehow it keeps the cost down, so people that don't have a lot of money can still afford to use solar. Does this area do anything like that?
I don't know I know that there's one project that was proposed in Carbondale, Illinois, that was going to be built on a brownfield, and then they ran into a lot of bureaucratic red tape trying to build it on something that still needed to be tested by the EPA to make sure there weren't any leftover toxins or anything like that. So I think that because there's already incentives to make the cost of a community solar project cheaper, and so that people can subscribe to it and save money at the same time. That's the whole goal of it, is you're not going to be paying extra. You're actually going to be seeing savings every month if you subscribe to a community solar project. So because those incentives already exist, I think it'd probably be easier to not add the extra hurdle of trying to build on top of a landfill. But I'm sure it would be a case-by-case basis. But I do know that the one group in Carbondale ran into some issues with trying to build on a brownfield.
Right, because I know in Maryland it is working.
Right, I think it probably just depends on the incentives that each state puts into place. But we've put these incentives into place, and we do have, like he mentioned, we do have so much rooftop space available and things like that I think that's kind of more the model. But like I said, we're waiting to see how it's all going to go.
Right, I just thought I'd throw it out. I thought that was an interesting concept.
Yeah, it is.
So with the benefits of solar is obvious, but I always often hear people saying about how the rare earth metals are acquired and the sustainability of that process. Do you have anything to comment on that? Just as a rebuttal, I never know what to say because I always hear that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of there's no such thing as a free energy lunch. Anything we're doing is using materials from somewhere, and probably if you go further enough back on the supply chain, there's part of that that's harmful. I think one thing that's promising about solar is that it's not a mature technology. A lot of these other technologies are more mature, like wind turbines, nuclear power plants, coal plants. These things we've been building for a lot longer. So there's going to be there's going to be the opportunity for small efficiency increases with those, but not on the same degree with solar, because solar isn't as mature. So hopefully we can because there's been less development with it, we can continue to find ways to just use less of those toxic materials in each solar panel. And I know there's some people working on making them out of sand and stuff. So there's
any recycling programs, just with all the old phones and computers and chips and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that, but I think that I've heard that solar is has the best opportunities for more improvements, which can hopefully make the environmental impact of each panel less and make it worth it. Yeah, it's a very good question. That's why I'm so interested in energy, because it's so complex and it's so foundational to everything that we do, and there's trade-offs everywhere, and trying to do it in the way that's the best for everyone and the best for our environment is just so complicated. So that's what I love about it, but it also makes it hard.
So sort of building off that with energy being super foundational to everything that we're doing. Two-part kind of raggedy question. The first part is like broadly, does Citizens Utility Board, in terms of being a watchdog around accountability and affordability, do y'all like train people on the energy system and like, you know, points of intervention in the energy system and like how it affects people's day-to-day lives? So that's like the broader question, and then very specifically, so I've been having some conversations with folks. I'm a member of Chicago DSA, and I've been wanting to work with the Environmental Working Group on finding a point of intervention with the ComEd contract that is coming up for renegotiation next year. So wondering if you have thoughts on like what makes sense in terms of democratizing the process, getting people aware, because I think there's not very many people who know that that contract is like a 30-year contract that's coming up for renegotiation. So yeah, just wondering what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so like I said, we have a large outreach team and we're like very flexible in terms of the presentations that we give. So I can give anyone who wants it my card afterwards, and you can reach out and we'll drive like anywhere in the state to give a presentation on how the energy system works and how you can take advantage of like existing energy efficiency programs and of like the solar subsidies and things like that, tailor it to what you're interested in. So yes, to your first question, we can definitely do that. And a lot of what we do is trying to make this very opaque system less opaque so that people know what they're getting charged for and don't like just have to, you know, they make it opaque on purpose. So trying to make it empower people to not get screwed over. I'll just say that. And then with your second question, I'm not an expert on like the legal contract part, but I could get you in touch with people that would know more about how to answer that. But I'm working on this like community solar stuff, and I don't want to like overstep my bounds by saying something that I'm not an expert on. But I'm glad that you guys are trying to get the word out about these contracts and things like that. Yeah.
And I am, do we have time for one more question? Or
Yes, we have time.
Okay, all right, so we got one more question for that.
This is maybe a little bit related. I think it's kind of just like a broader question about utilities. I think like part of this is the cooperative utility. There's also like the public utility. So I know there's been a move of like considering all of the kind of like austerity and privatization of these often public utilities, and then there's been a kind of counter response of like trying to municipalize and have like public utilities as a thing. Has that been? I don't know how much of your work in the state connects to those kinds of things, but has that been a conversation that you feel like is like happening, or do you feel like that there could be more conversations around like remunicipalizing and having public utilities?
Yeah, there are a lot. I think there's around 400 cities and municipalities in Illinois that have negotiated contracts on behalf of like all of their residents to have like a public utility, and a lot of that happened after the financial crisis because ComEd was locked into this specific rate, which the Illinois Power Agency negotiated on behalf of Illinois consumers. That ComEd had to follow, and it was a good rate until the financial crisis, and then the market for energy just like brought the prices down, but ComEd was still locked into this rate, so there was a big opportunity for municipalities to negotiate much better rates and contracts on behalf of their citizens. So there are about like 400 municipalities that did that, and a lot of times that has been successful. Now with the way that the market is, ComEd's rate is pretty much exactly where the market rate is, so there's a little bit less opportunity to save as much money. But we have a lot of people come to us, they'll show us like the letter they get saying that their municipality is switching to this new like group utility, and what they end up getting is like a letter saying you have to opt out, otherwise you will automatically be switched. And so there's some confusion over like whether or not it's a good deal or not. So we try to look at them on a case-by-case basis and help people be aware of whether or not it's a good deal in the long term. And we also do a lot around trying to educate people about alternative suppliers, because the fact that the energy utilities have been deregulated has opened the door for a lot of alternative suppliers to come in, and so those are the people that like send you lots of mail or come knock on your door and try to get you to switch your supply away from ComEd to them, and they'll offer like really low rates at the beginning, and then oftentimes lock you into contracts that are hard to get out of, that overcharge people. So we try to do a lot of outreach to make sure that people are aware that a lot of those are not a good deal, and like how that ties in with kind of like the larger energy policy in Illinois. And yeah, so we do. There is a lot of conversation about those things.
All right, we've reached the conclusion of this panel. I want to thank you for attending to the panel. If you just maybe offer the websites where people can plug into this information and continue the conversation further.
Yeah, so we have a lot of great fact sheets on the Citizens Utility Board website, which is citizensutilityboard.org. If you go to solar and clean energy, there's fact sheets there. I also brought with me printouts of our community solar fact sheet, which goes into more depth about some of what I was talking about today. And I also have an email list if you would like to sign up to be kept in the loop about community solar, and I have business cards. So please come see me if you are interested in this, because it's a great thing that we can get going in Illinois. And then the other website is solarinthecommunity.org, I believe. But you can link to it from our website as well. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christina, for coming in the clutch and hosting a panel alone. You provided some great information. Thanks, Mike. So, this is another time for intermission. We got 10 minutes. When you guys come back, we got some amazing speakers just talking about policy in Chicago and what's happening around that, and how we can use the political office to increase solidarity, economy, and cooperation in Chicago. So 10 minutes, and then hopefully I'll see you guys back. By the way, I didn't mention this earlier. One of the previous panels mentioned about the ESOP laws and employee ownership laws. That's going to be covered at 3:15, a more in-depth understanding of what that means for cooperative financing. See you guys in 10 minutes.